Welcome to another session of V2T Expert Panel Program. I am Victor Monga, a Network and Security Technical Account Specialist for VMware. What is the V2T Expert Panel Program? It is geared towards community awareness around NSX-V to NSX-T migration, and it allows VMware to capture your feedback and pain points to improve the process of migration. Thank you for listening to this session and send us your feedback. Today, I am privileged to moderate a session of an amazing panel. Our guests of honor today are Susan, William, Samuel, Suds, and Thomas, the authors of the book, Migrate to VMware NSX-T Data Center. Without further ado, let's start with a round of introductions. Susan?
Thank you, Victor. Hi, my name's Susan. I'm in NSBU product marketing. I mainly look after container networking, network automation, and service mesh. But as we embark on the cloud native journey, modern applications, we wanted to write about the book so that people can benefit from the latest and greatest in NSX-T.
Hey, this is William Grismore, 27 Virtual. Thank you very much for having me today. My background with 27 Virtual, as you may know, 27 Virtual has been doing this NSX Ninja program for many years. In 2017, we started doing some NSX consulting work. We've done a lot of different deployments around NSX-V and now T. Of course, a lot of migrations. We definitely see, a need for customers to move from, NSX-V to NSX-T. Of course, we do a lot of greenfield deployments as well. We also see a lot of VCF deployments, as well as customers using HCX to migrate. And within migrations, we'll talk about also leveraging some bridging technologies. And our background is, from a consulting perspective, and how we actually work with customers and helping them migrate from V to T.
Hi all, Samuel Como here. I'm a technical product manager and I'm part of the networking and security BU within VMware. One of my focus areas is migration from NSX for vSphere to NSX-T. More specifically, I focus on Migration Coordinator. This is a built-in tool with many options that allows customers to migrate from NSX-V to T, whether you want to go conservative or a quick approach, right? So this is one of my focus areas. I also look at a few other areas such as performance in regards to VMware's NSX-T.
Hello, this is Sudhanshu Paddy. I'm a Chief Technology Officer at SPJ Solutions, a boutique company that specializes on NSX and VCF. I am 25 years experience in IT and last 15 to 20 years heavily dedicated towards networking and security. That's on-premise and cloud. We have developed an NSX practice around 7 years ago when NSX was purchased as an Ashira. And to date, we have over 350 engagements, and many of which are V2T migrations and also VCF migrations. I'm author of this book, as well as I'm presenter at a VMworld session, real life experience from NSX-V to NSX-T, and looking forward to sharing my experience later on.
And hello, my name is Thomas Vigneron. I am product manager in VMware Network and Security Business Unit, working on NSX-V to NSX-T migration and automation. Before that, I used to be an NSX specialist, helping customers adopt NSX for 4 years. And now I participated to this book in order to help them get the latest and greatest of NSX.
Experts, my first question to all of you is, why did we need this book, right? I mean, we came up with this book and readers are really enjoying and loving it. But again, I think we should convey this message. What was the need for this book? What is the message that we are trying to communicate across to our readers through this book?
Sure, I can give light. So NSX-T provides a lot of advanced use cases because NSX-T is NSX-V was created maybe about nearly a decade ago. And at the time, the use cases at the time, were not about containers. There were not a lot of, applications that are distributed on multiple clouds. Maybe people were using 3-tier applications at the time. They might make use of one data center, maybe several data centers. But the world has really changed, and NSX-T opens up all these use cases that were not seen, about a decade ago. And my colleagues would discuss about the different use cases, but the container use case is very prevalent. Um, Applications are expected to make use of containers in a very significant way. Security has become very important in the securing secure applications across multiple clouds. So all of these use cases that NSXT opens up, and that's the reason for writing the book, so that more and more of our customers can make the journey to NSXT.
Yeah, Susan, I couldn't agree anymore. So that's a great, cover of what we're looking for to help people with. I think the main need for the book is to, really help enable customers understand not only the benefits of NSXT, but the process to actually migrate from V to T. We see customers in the field that they definitely have a need for all these different, features that Susan mentioned. One thing that I see a lot of is a lot of customers will have multiple data centers. And, in NSXV, you could definitely have a multi-data center solution, but the new NSXT multi-data center solution with federation is definitely something that our customers are moving towards. So that's a great feature. That'd be one reason people want to migrate. The other one that we see, I agree with Susan, security is really key. We have customers in the field, and we see customers building these environments with all the headlines in the news about all the different types of security breaches and all the different things going on. You have a really good foundation in NSXV with the distributed firewall. And what we basically do is take customers on that journey to get them over to T so they can take the firewalls they have now, go through that migration process, implement the firewalls in an NSXT environment, the distributed firewall, and then enhance that with the new IDS, IPS features and network protection features that are now built into T. We also see customers, to Susan's point, using containers. We see a lot of Tanzu deployments, leveraging the new features in NSXT. And we also see a lot of customers with VMC and AWS in that kind of hybrid cloud environment, so they can move workloads back and forth from on-prem to the cloud and make that journey to the cloud and maintain security across those different locations. But I think, just for the book itself, we want to show people that they can make the transition and how easy that transition can actually be.
Can't agree more with Susan and William on that. Victor, I think this whole new use cases, right, addressed by NSXT, these are, I think, the compelling factors for customers to start looking at, NSXT, cloud native bare metal workloads. Even from my perspective, the performance enhancements that we bring to the table, right, are some of the driving factors. And of course, the top of mind question then is how do we move, right, from NSXV to NSXT? And some of the questions like what options are available? Is there like a VMware GSS supported approach? Could we do this one shot? Or like in an upgrade type of workflow? What if you want to take, let's say, a more conservative approach, and I want to take like a few weeks, migrate workload by workload instead of going one shot? And then can we do it by ourselves? Can we script it? What if we need help? Or even if we need full support, do we have like VMware or partners helping with this support, right? So there's so many questions. So basically, this book addresses these questions. We not only take like a very close look at Migration Coordinator, which is again the built-in tool that comes bundled with an NSXT Manager, right? Not only do we take a close look at that, but we also take a look at other approaches, including like if someone wanted to do it themselves, then how do we go about it, right? So, and then we finish it off with actual customer use cases so that the customers can get a feel of what this migration journey looks like.
Thank you, everyone. So having done over 50 migrations, I felt like I can share some of the real life examples and stories and lessons learned. And that is the main message I'm trying to communicate as an author for this book. And this book complements heavily to the VMworld session as well, where there is NSX V2 NSXT real life experience. So the key reason for me to contribute this, when customers are making the journey from NSX V to NSXT, to take great advantage of all the latest and greatest features available for NSXT, they have a lot of questions. They have questions around how long will it take to migrate? What is the effort I'm looking for? Is there a new hardware procurement needed? What is the process looks like? Is there an application downtime that will occur? What other systems I have to migrate together with the NSX V to NSXT? What other systems will be impacted, like my monitoring system or my cybersecurity system, my logging system, my vCenter system, my backup recovery system? So my goal here was to produce some real life examples of two customers on those two chapters where we outline different processes for migrating from NSX V to NSXT and all the dependent components that needs to be addressed during the migration process. One other critical item that comes to mind while customers performing this migration is the workload and the effort and all the different key items that needs to be addressed, including the change management process, including the skills and additional resources that may be needed, and making sure that when you're going from V to T, the changes from V to T are addressed. And when you're deploying into the target platform, into the NSXT, VMware's recommended best practices are maintained on the T. So when you read those two chapters, one key item that is also mentioned is not only real life experience and also making sure that the conversion also maintains the VMware recommended best practices in NSXT.
As it was said, NSXT offers a number of new features and also a number of improvements from what we have learned from NSXV. So the idea in this book is to show to customers how they can migrate from NSXV to NSXT. And typically also because some people may choose to migrate in different manners to give them the different possibilities in order to do so in the best way for them. Whether they want to do something quick, like an upgrade in a single maintenance window, whether they prefer something more long time with moving to a new platform, for instance, so that they have a way to know all the different tools and techniques that will allow them to move to NSXT and to benefit from those new features.
So for our readers, they will read this in this book about small and large environment. And even though I know we all like one size fits all, but I think I want to ask, so since you authored these two chapters, what was the need for splitting the migration strategies into two different chapters as small and large environments in chapter 3 and 4?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Victor. So the chapter 3 is a small environment where microsegmentation only migration, because a lot of our NSXV customers, they're using NSX for security. They are wanting to make the journey towards networking, but many of them are happy with the security components of NSXV. So we wanted to address that with the chapter 3. And when you're taking these complex microsegmentation from NSXV to NSXT, a lot of different conversion-related challenges that occur, and those are highlighted on the chapter 3. But it is a single DC environment, microsegmentation only, and small environment where in-place migration happened. So we migrated the management plane, followed by the data plane migration. The next chapter is for a larger environment where we have performed both in-place and out-place migrations, but for all components of NSXV, including microsegmentation, including network virtualization, as well as automation. So they have CI/CD pipelines, they have VRA. So we wanted to address provide a real-life example of a customer where we are migrated, and this was a federal integrator, where all those complexities occur. So we wanted to highlight in that larger customer, their processes that needed to be changed, the teams that needed to be trained, the CI/CD pipelines that needed to be changed, and the VRA blueprints that needed to be changed, and a lot of other stuff that needed to be changed, because customers using NSX as a platform on a larger environment, they use them a little bit differently than customers using it just for microsegmentation. So I wanted to highlight from a real life example perspective, the different challenges we went through and how we overcame them. If you look at the workflow of migration, they're very different. For microsegmentation only, there are some pure steps. For a larger customer doing network virtualization, automation migration, as well as microsegmentation, the steps are different. And the different teams need to be involved, and different type of processes need to be followed, and different change management approvals may be needed. So that was the purpose of giving a real life example of two different flavors of migration, in place, out place, as well as microsegmentation only versus the whole process.
Yeah, so for example, if I'm a small organization or I have a small environment, do you think the strategy or the migration strategy will be different for a large environment? And I know it could be an obvious question, but as an author, what message are you trying to give it back to the readers?
See, if it is a small environment, you have few clusters and you have using NSXV, the process will be different because you may be able to migrate them much quicker. But if it is a large environment, and we have seen this environment in a Fortune 10 companies, right? A very large environment. So NSX is not just being used as a tool for networking and security. It's used as an overarching platform for the entire enterprise needs. So in that case, the process is very different because B2T migration all in a sudden becomes a complex process where you also have to change your internal processes, your documentation, your operations manual, your training procedure, your security incident procedures. A lot of other things has to be taken care of when you are considering this migration from the V2T. So the processes are very different from small environment to a large environment.
So the book name is Migrate to VMware NSXT Data Center. So my next question is for William. In the chapter 5, I read somewhere how having NSXV already deployed helped. I want to pick on that, and I want to see what you have to say about it.
Having V already deployed for sure is going to help, but it's not going to solve all problems. But if you think about customers' environment, things that, how would having V already deployed help versus, say, a greenfield deployment? Definitely migrating from V to T, there are some challenges. Sud's pointed out very well. There's definitely a lot of considerations, as he listed very well there. But having V already deployed helps in a few areas. So how does it actually help? Well, one thing that it will help with is, one thing that we run into with customers is making sure they have the proper MTU. It's a very basic requirement that you need to have. Now in NSXT, the MTU requirement could be a little bit higher, 1700. If the customer is in an environment where jumbo frames are already configured, that's something that's definitely going to help. Another area that we ran into with this particular customer is that they were using NSXV in an environment that was a multi-site environment. So there were considerations around the MTU, not just within the data center, but we also had to make sure on the data center interconnects that the MTU is already set. This customer used to use a legacy OTV network environment to stretch layer 2 as one of the use cases for NSX. So the fact they already had NSXV in their environment, the fact that they had the multi-data center platform already in place, they had the MTU in place, that's one example of how that was already taken care of. So when we get into the steps where we deploy the NSXT managers and we think about the configuration, those considerations are already there and solved. And other interesting thing about already having V deployed is that this customer was using vRealize and vRealize automation. There are quite some differences there with the vRealize integration with VNT, but understanding the processes within their blueprints for deployment and then how they can leverage that. And they were doing this actually for an SAP environment. So there's some pretty complex application deployments that were being done. So having that experience, understanding the differences between VNT and how to make those changes help the customer. Another thing that's interesting is from a knowledge transfer standpoint. One thing that we really pride ourselves in helping our customers, and one reason that I want to help author the book is, knowledge transfer and making sure customers understand, what they currently have in their NSXV environment to what T can do is very important. So what we did is we broke down feature by feature, the exact differences in NSXV and the differences to T, and we showed the use case. Of course, we know V is end of support coming up soon, but there are more compelling reasons. So already having V deployed solved some technical challenges, but it also made the knowledge transfer also a little bit easier. A few other things that also helped is sizing, planning, from a resource standpoint, understanding the environment in depth, knowing the memory and the CPUs in the host, where things are going to be deployed, from a management sizing perspective, from now an NSXT edge node sizing perspective, understanding how they wanted to use the product. So when they got T deployed in that environment, they already had a pretty good understanding of what they were going to use. I'd almost think of it like as like a 2.0. It's like, okay, we did all this stuff in V. Now we're going to T. Here's what we did so far. This was pretty good. We have all these new features in T, and now we can take advantage of those features. So from, like Sud said, like the change control processes, understanding those already in place, right? Doing maintenance and upgrades of the product. They've already been through the V upgrade process. They kind of know what it's like to take the product from one version to the other. If I do an upgrade, what is the outage like? They've already experienced that process. So that having V deployed, even though there's still complexities in migrating from V to T for sure, and there's a lot of considerations, there's a huge benefit to customers that already have V deployed. So I would kind of wrap it up in saying, you need to go to T, you've already got D deployed. Think of all the benefits that brings you. You've already got a really good base understanding. Architecturally, yes, T is very different, but having that already deployed solves a lot of these issues around networking and security that you've already got solved. Now let's just move you to T and let's take advantage of all the great new features that T brings.
Well, I do have a quick question on that chapter. So organizations deployed NSXV for BCDR, BCP, DRP, and in your chapter, you do talk about BCDR support as well. If you give us a quick overview on that one as well, what our readers expect out of that?
Yeah, I think the big thing there is really, when you think about the challenges around the disaster recovery, the big thing that I see as far as like the benefit, they already had that platform in place, but they're going to solve the problem by going to a federated design, which I mentioned before, where they can now take advantage of having the NSXT local managers at both sites. They can have the stretch tier 0, the stretch tier 1, and they can leverage this new infrastructure. So making that shift is going to make that stretch environment that's already pretty good even that much better.
All right, now comes to the biggest question I think almost every customer wants to know. How do I migrate from NSXV to NSXT? What are my options? NSXV provided me with distributed firewall and all these amazing software-defined networking, but how does NSXT is better? What else NSXT brings on the table that I need to look at, such as security features, IDPS, URL analysis, and so much more with our acquisition with Last Line about NTA and DR and sandboxing. So I would like to start with Samuel, if you can talk about the migration options that you have in chapter 2.
Victor, you mentioned like one size fits all doesn't actually work here, right? So I think that really explains like customers have different expectations and goals. For some, like, an upgrade type workflow, a one shot is good. But for others, it's more like more of a conservative approach of, okay, I want to move it workload by workload, and I want to do it like over a period of time. And in some cases, they want to do it by themselves. And in some cases, they want to kind of go with like, PSO or something, engage more hands-on support, right? And for some folks, hardware is a concern too. Like, what if I don't have like fresh new hardware or whatever, right? So what if I want to do the entire migration within the hardware limitations that I have? Or for some, like, I mean, they may be in refresh, recycle mode with the hardware, and that helps too. Whatever may be the customer's current requirements, right? One of the things that we have looked into, right, like especially with this particular chapter, right, is to address those requirements and address wherever the customers are, address those pain points and try to explain how they can get from where they are to NSXT. So while in this chapter, we focus on migration approaches in general, in the sense like we have the NSXT migration coordinator that's actually built in, and you can use it like in a do-it-yourself style, right? We also talk about like how would you do it, the way it's built. Customers can read through it and kind of like if they want to, they can actually build a solution for themselves too, like via scripting or things like that, right? So we cover all of these various options within this chapter. But diving a little bit more into the migration coordinator itself, right? Migration coordinator, like I said, it has, like, I mean, it has the flexibility to address diverse requirements, whether it is conservative or one shot, do it yourself, or you want full support, right? It's basically, it has multiple modes. One of the modes is what we call an in-place mode. What we mean by that is within the same hardware, like let's say you're running your NSXV on a certain set of hardware. On that same hardware, you can go ahead and install NSXT manager, and then the migration coordinator is actually a part of a tool that is part of this NSXT manager, and you can start with that migration coordinator tool. You can start migrating over from V to T in place. What that means is using the same hardware, no new hardware, we actually take a look at all the configuration pieces. Victor, you were mentioning like people have used all these firewall rules and whatnot, right? Like the thousands of rules, how do we move them, right? We actually look at that entire configuration and start moving all the pieces, everything that's on V. That is the configuration around like your firewall rules, your networking, your edges, your services, including the edges themselves and the hosts. We actually replace the hosts, the VIPs on the host from V to T, all of this with a simple click by click kind of approach, right? And move the customers over to NSXT. This is what we call the in-place migration. And one of the best things about this approach is we focused on making sure that the downtime is like really low. So the downtime that we experience is like when we go from V to T on the edge side, convergence takes time, a few seconds. So that is the downtime that you're looking at. And when it comes to the actual workload itself for the VMs and so on, it's as little as a vMotioning a VM over. This is just one approach. There are multiple other approaches. I would let Thomas probably talk about the lift and shift approach and what we have there.
Yes, so what we have seen also is that in many cases, customers want to do migration between NSXV and NSXT, not in the same environment as an upgrade, but between two environments. There are multiple reasons for that. Maybe some new hardware, maybe the move to a more modern stack like VCF, or simply in order to have more flexibility into how the applications are being moved. And so we have detailed on how to do that in the book, and typically how to leverage NSXT features like the L2 bridge, which allows to bridge between a network on NSXV and a network in NSXT in order to extend the layer 2. And then with the ability, typically, that either the migration coordinator can offer with a modular migration firewall or scripting, manual scripting, the user can move the firewall rules, then you can recreate its topology in NSXT and move the VMs from one to the other at his own pace, and keeping the control over which things are moving at a given time. So this is detailed in the book. It shows really how you can use some features already in the product, I would say, in NSXT in order to do this migration, and how you can have multiple techniques to achieve your goal depending on your requirements. That was said by Samuel, that was said by Suds before. But the idea really is what we have seen is that customers have their opinion on how to move from NSXV to NSXT. And we want to offer them the tools and the techniques in order to be able to reach that goal with their requirement and the way that they choose.
Yeah, so as during the introduction, I talked about V2T expert panel program and what it is, and it is geared towards community awareness around NSXV to NSXT migration. So I will take a question from community and talk about all of this book and all the things that we're talking about. They're talking about moving forward. They're talking about NSXV to T. I mean, everybody, we are covering how to migrate moving forward V to T. What about rollback? Samuel, I'll pick on you. How about rollback? How do we handle that? Does this book cover that?
Great question, Victor. Rollback is also an option. And we actually touch a few stages where we could roll back. I mean, like I kind of talk about like assessment and rollback, right? Like assessment is one ask and rollback is one ask. They are actually covered in this book, and there are areas and places where you could actually roll back to go back to NSX-V.
The biggest question of the evening, right? Key takeaways. Now, a reader is thinking about it, or maybe they have thought about it, considering to reading this book. From all of you authors, we would like to know what are the key takeaways that the must-reads or favorite sections of your book. Obviously, that's going to be what you wrote, but leaving prejudice aside, what do you think that the key takeaways or must-reads are? So I'll start with William.
For me, when you look at it holistically, I think one of the main things is to look at the book as a whole and make sure that you understand that there are many different techniques that can be used. And the one thing I'd like to point out with that is you can have environments where you can actually use different techniques, especially for larger customers. You may have a particular cluster. Maybe a customer has a QA environment that's kind of separate. Maybe that's a good target for an in-place upgrade, right? Maybe that same customer has purchased new hardware and they're going to do a lift and shift migration. Or you may be using a script to migrate firewall rules or a third-party tool. All those different techniques can be used. And I would like to emphasize that there's like no one size fits all solution. So you should look at the book, think about all the different solutions, and try to find the one from the book that best fits whatever your needs are or what the combination of those tools would be. That would be my main takeaway.
How about you, Samuel? What's your best part of this book?
Well, Victor, I think I would suggest reading chapter 2 because this actually gives you an overall view of what's available, and of course it dives into the migration coordinator itself. But understanding how migration coordinator works can also help if customers want to do it by yourself, and there are customers out there who have done incredible solutions too, right? You could use that too. But reflecting what William has said, right? There's a huge, lot of material here and lots of different approaches, addresses almost customers at every spectrum here. I think it's good to actually look at what is available and know that we are here to support not just VMware, but we have experts from third-party experts like Williams and certs to kind of support in this effort.
So, Suds, if you're giving a key takeaway out of this book to someone, what would you say?
Absolutely. Thank you, Victor. So CTOP as a migration tool was utilized for both of these migrations. And the first key takeaway is real life experience. If you're reading these two chapters, these are the true customers, real customers, where they've gone through the journey and the process they followed, and what problems they had, and how we can maintain the VMware recommended best practice from V to T, and of course changed a few things to continue to maintain the best practice. The second key takeaway is to not overlook some aspects of migration. I'll give you a good example, backup. Why would a backup be affected by a V2T migration? It has affected many customers. So I mentioned this before on this podcast, that the VMworld session that I presented, V2T real life migration, has almost 50 lessons learned, technical issues. And that, along with these two chapters, will provide a very healthy and a wealth of knowledge around the type of things you would normally overlook, but not to overlook when you're performing these V2T migrations.
Thank you. How about you, Thomas?
So I would say the first takeaway I would take, and this is true also from this panel, is that we are here to help you, both VMware and with both the BU and the tools, but also partners, also PSO, in order to do this migration. That's really our goal, to allow the customers to be able to migrate and to access all the new, nice, interesting things which are in NSXT. And the second one is that we can have listed here the different techniques to do so that a customer can make, I would say, a choice with every card in his hand. And so my key takeaway would be, look at the book because you can migrate. And so pick the right way for you to do it. That's really the good time to do so.
Yeah, so experts, I know there's a lot of content out there about migration, NSXV to NSXT. we, VMware, and the partners are doing everything what we can to make sure that our community, our customers, everybody is aware of what's going on. And we are all putting a lot of content out there. And I know book is as a good starting point for our readers, our customers to start looking at what they need to know to enable them, their staff, or even executive level, what they need to know about this migration. So, Susan, what are the other resources that we need to consider and the reader will learn about it as a starting point from this book that they can take on learn about migration?
So, Victor, this is exactly the reason we wrote this book, because then you can have a handy guide to the resources with real world examples from other customers that have already done the migration. So we have already built, the top reasons to migrate to NSXT. You can find that on VMware.com. We also have an alias for outside customers to reach the migration experts. It's a GOTO -NSXT at VMware.com. And I can confidently give that information out because VMware and our partners, we really care deeply and we want to help our customers move to NSXT and enjoy all the benefits of the new use cases that opens up. Then in the resources, we actually have documentation, design guides for how to do network design with NSXT. We've written several blog posts that Samuel and Thomas had talked about, all the migration approaches, whether it's modular migration approaches, automated maintenance mode. So there's a lot of resources that we've listed in the book, the blog posts. And we also even included scripts, very commonly used scripts. So some people make use of, say, like vMotion to specific VIFs. So we have scripts for that. And we also have other things. And there's also outside podcasts. We talked about, there's a podcast called NSX Ninjas Podcast. They've covered this topic. And very, very importantly is we have a whole tech zone that has a migration resource. It also has the demos from the companies, that are from our partner companies, as well as demos on the migration coordinator. And then, of course, many links to the VMworld sessions that Suds was talking about. And we also have video demonstrations that's also listed in the resource section of the book. So you are supported. So customers, as they make their transition, as they plan out their migration, this could be a guide that they can refer to. And they can also refer to VMware as well as the VMware experts to help them with the migrations.
Thank you. And that's exactly the point, right? This is a starting point for our readers. Start here and there's a lot. VMware is there to support you during all of this migration, and you'll get a lot of content. Once you start this book, you'll read about it, you'll learn about it, and we have a lot of other content that will point you throughout this book. So as I said in the beginning, the goal of this program, V2T Expert Panel Program, is to allow us to capture your feedback and pain points so that we can go ahead and improve the process of migration. Experts, thank you so much for talking to us, giving us your opinion about the book since you are the authors. And I really hope that our readers are enjoying this book now. I appreciate it. Thanks so much, all of you.